there are no hard rules for photography. This is not us. If we telling you a tip, this isn't saying you must do this at all times. You may have artistic reasons for doing it. It might just look cool at the time. Take all of this with a sort of pinch of salt. Everything here is just a suggestion, just to eliminate the majority of accidental posing problems that can crop up in photographs without you really noticing. If you do have any suggestions, we're trying to be kind of an open workshop here, so just stick your hand up if you've got any tips or any questions, and we'll get to you as soon as we can. Okay, so just to let you know, first of all, we're just going to go through a quick top 10 tips for tip-top posing. And after that, we're just going to have a sort of open workshop where we can get you guys down, you can practice posing, practice taking pictures with our volunteers here, and generally just share tips and see what works and what does not work. Okay, so the first one is, check your camera settings first. Your white balance, your focus, your exposure, your etceteras, etceteras. If you don't know what any of that means, make sure that it's set onto the green override. And
this is for people with SLRs, but bear in mind that point and shoot digital cameras also have many of these settings. White balance, for example, you can change that within your point and shoot. So just make sure you've got them all on the right settings. If you're the kind of person that likes to fiddle around with things, make sure you put them back to what they were. Otherwise, you might get, say for instance, you're taking a picture, you took the picture indoors on tungsten setting for your white balance, and then you go outdoors and take a picture, it'll be blue.
Yeah, and in general, just make sure that that there's plenty of, the more light that you have around, the better your shot will be, and make sure it can flashing as well. There's a huge spotlight above your cosplayer. That generally does not look good. Use flash whenever you can. This ties into lighting. Again, it's a beginner's tip. Just whenever you can, flash is there to even out the lighting, make everything look better, no matter what. Occasionally, it doesn't work. Like if there. Here, be mindful of reflections if you're in front of a window and the flash would appear. Obviously, it's not time to use flash there, but in general, flash generally just makes things better. As I said, the more light there is, the better your photos will be, and flash is there in order to bring more light.
Can I add a little bit to that?
Go ahead.
For DSLR cameras, if you have an external flash, that works better than the regular flash on the camera itself.
Yeah, pop-up flash will do the job, but if you can afford external flash, then great, fantastic. You have money, yay!
Yeah, fantastic.
You have a question?
Also, things like that one is also the costume itself. If you've got any reflective bits on it.
Yeah, or if you have an all-white costume, such as the one that he's wearing.
Yeah. That is a great example of an all-white costume you're wearing there.
Oh, yes.
Yes. Yes. Okay, basic posing tip is to have your hip facing towards the camera.
We can do a bit of a real-life demonstration here.
Yep.
Okay, you can come forward, Laura. Okay, now what I'd like you to do is just stand square on to the audience and set hands by side to the cosmic, okay? So she's just square on, everything is sort of big rectangle shape there, okay? So if you're wanting a more dynamic, more flattering pose, show off her wonderful curves, etc., can I get you to turn your hip towards me? There we go, okay? So now she's turning her hip towards the camera, and as you can see, they've got a lot more angles, curves, etc. Just makes for a more interesting shot, okay?
Yeah. Yep, as said, more dynamic and flattering shot, and it just makes the cosplayer look a lot better. Tell the cosplayer if anything needs fixed at the time. This can include wigs, bra straps, con badges, and so forth. If it's in the case of a wig, the cosplayer will not be aware if their wig is slid back.
This is a prime example of this.
And the hairline is showing. They will not notice if it's gone out of style and now it's all in their face or something like that. And just for other things they won't be aware of. It will make the shot just a lot better and the pose a lot better if you make sure to tell them. Most cosplayers will not mind and will actually be very, very grateful if you point these things out to them.
Because it can be so frustrating after the convention, you're browsing the internet trying to get hold of pictures of your costume. In the case of last expo, I was dressed in a costume, spent ages curling it, making it look nice, found some pictures on the internet, it had gone like that.
Yeah.
And nobody told me.
Yeah. I just say that because some photographers are like, oh, I don't know if I really want to say anything to the cosplayer. Believe me, the cosplayer will appreciate it. Keep the poses comfortable. Okay? If the cosplayer is feeling comfortable, then the pose will look more natural. I know there are quite a lot of animes and such where the poses are crazy or just a blatant violation against all that is
Physics.
of physics and
Gravity.
anatomy, etc. But if you try best to try and make the cosplayer feel natural while doing it or feel comfortable while doing it, then it just makes it look a lot better. This even applies for the really simple ones, just like with hands on the hip and such like that. As long as they look comfortable, well, as long as they are comfortable. Yeah.
Unless you're not gay.
Bear in mind the limitations of the costume and the cosplayer. Do not ask them to twist something that they cannot physically twist.
Or for example, some cosplayers are unable to actually physically sit down in their costume.
Yeah, because of the way that the costume is made. Some people have hyper flexibility, that is fantastic. Not a lot of people do.
Not me.
No. Avoid obscuring the eyes. The eyes are a focal point for the gaze in most portrait shots. You might see a lot of cool illustrations where, like, for example, with Code Geass, you know, he does a lot of things with like that, where he's covering his eye. This may look good in art and such. It generally does not look good in photos, or rather, it's very, very hard to do in photos well.
So for example, Ches here, who has sunglasses on, well, his eyes are obscured even without having his hand there. So obviously, you can't see his eyes very well behind his sunglasses. You can just about, but because they are reflective, if you're taking a picture using a camera can sometimes get the reflection, but not necessarily the eyes, depending on whether your autofocus is stitched up or not. So, for example, what you can do is you can pull your glasses down your nose, that's it, and then if you just have one hand up to your glasses, just like you're adjusting them. So like so. So you can see the eyes, but still have the feature of the glasses, which is a key aspect of his costume.
You have to look at flashes. Often if you look through pictures where a flash has gone through sunglasses, it will knock a lot of the glade covering off the glasses as well.
Yeah. So if you have it at a slight angle, helps reflect that a bit less.
Avoid the walls.
Oops.
Yeah, oops, indeed. A lot of the time you'll find a cosplayer and you take them to the nearest wall in order to take a photo and such like that. Do not have them this close to the wall. You want to add a little bit of depth to your photos to make them look better. So have them stand about a meter away from the wall, say around here. It generally just, honestly, adds a bit of depth and focus to the shot, makes it a bit more dynamic. The exception to this is if you're doing it deliberately, if it's you're trying to a pose where you're leaning against the wall, if you're doing...
Yeah, give you an example.
Yes, of course.
Yesterday I was doing a photo shoot as a zombie with Juliet from Lollipop Chainsaw, you know what I'm talking about. And was a pose where Kara, who was cosplaying Juliet, has to be up against the wall like this, just sticking the feet out and just looking that way. So you still have the dynamic of depth behind, instead of shooting it straight.
Yeah, so you don't have to be actually facing directly opposite the wall, you can do it from an angle. Sometimes where you stand in relation to your cosplay can make a huge difference in your picture.
Also, how high or low you're holding the camera.
Yeah, and you're going to get the chance to kind of try these things out during the workshop.
Consider the pose box. If you'll see around this convention that cosplayers generally can have gigantic props. For example, giant rifles and such like that.
Okay, so if I get you to just come in this way a bit, so you can sit. What I need to do is just stick this straight out to your right. So she's here. The gun's over here. So if you have a photo, which way you meant to look at? Do you look at her? Do you look here? Do you look somewhere in the middle? Who's familiar with the rule of thirds in photography? Okay, so basically, when you're taking pictures of people, generally you like to divide the picture up into thirds, okay? So she would be in the left-hand third, that would be the middle, and that would be the right-hand third. So basically, everything's weighted towards that end. So with this kind of shot here, it's better off if you self-contain her into this third here. So you need to just put your rifle just across the south, just like that. There we go. So you see how it fits into a nice neat rectangle now, and you divide the thirds into head, body, Okay, so it's just changed it from a rectangle into a vertical one.
True, but
You ever had something like that?
Yeah.
so you can still hold out the rifle like you did. Okay, you did.
But if you
Now-
have somebody else at the other end,
No. You just shoot it from another angle, then you'll be looking down the gun at the character.
yeah.
So
okay,
it's
you
still in
turn
the
to
same
face
box.
the audience while holding that position. So
Okay.
again, she's in the pose box, okay?
That would be more a little bit like this.
Yeah,
For
so
the
you've
people
got
on
your
that
rectangle
side.
still. But in this instance, she's got the gun pointing directly at you, pretty much, in this direction. We're going to go on to that in a moment.
The only trouble with having her in the back position in demonstrating, to get that shot, often it depends how wide your lens is, you've got to step back.
Yeah,
first.
step
And
back
often
into-
that, you can't do that because there's people walking in front, behind you.
True. Yeah, it just becomes much more of a hassle to take a photograph like
If
that.
you're just shooting with a standard 50mm portrait lens, then you would have trouble with something like that.
I mean, yeah, you can get photos where like the end of the gun would be cut off or something like that, or someone's head, even though the hat would be slightly cut off. But just in general framing terms, it just looks better if you try and get everything inside the photo when you're taking it.
Another note pose we put down the barrel is, so you see a lot of people who, when you're going through the websites and all that, they've had the photos posted. And going straight down the barrel often obscures a lot of the costumes.
Yeah, I'm
That
going to
is-
go on to that in a moment.
That is that the next one? Yes. Don't point at the camera. That would mean do not point directly at the camera. If you point directly at the camera, you'll get what I like to call floaty hand, when it looks like there is a giant hand floating in front of your face and nothing attaching it to your body, because right down the barrel there, you can't see that at all.
But that is often the choice of the photographer himself or her.
Yeah, there's a certain
shots.
degree of artistic
So-
license, but you have to have your sort of composition rules in the back of your head for
Yeah,
that sort of
exactly. If you are a cosplayer and you do want to have a one, for example, pointing the gun here, okay, a better idea is to point it slightly lower.
thing. Shoot in the crotch.
Gotcha!
Gotcha!
Shoot him in the crotch rule. Because, as you see, you've lowered it slightly down, that means we see all the way across, all the way up to the barrel, and then to the top of it. That also helps with composition because your gaze is naturally drawn to the front of there and follows it up to the cosplayer at the end.
Can you not go up as well, so shoot over the shoulder rather than down at the waist?
You can do, but it depends on the way that the prop is made. So in this
Yeah.
case, a lot of the interesting details are at the top, in which case it's better to point it downwards.
You can certainly point up as well. You can point to the left and right and such like that.
So because she's got
this-
details on the gun on this side, having a slightly more diagonal shot to get the detail again would be a good way to go.
Plus it's the fact that if we are going for the shooting the camera pose, then shooting up or to the left or to the right won't look as accurate, so to speak, as pointing down. Okay. And lastly, it's okay to pose your cosplayer manually, but make sure you ask first. That is the difference between good touch and bad touch, ladies and gentlemen.
In some cases, cosplayers won't really mind because they want the best shot as well.
Yeah, most cosplayers, this is going back to the sort of fixing the wig. You know, some photographers are nervous about asking something like that. Most cosplayers really will not mind if you just say, excuse me, can I pose you manually? So, can I pose you manually? Okay, so then I would say, okay, I want you to hold the weapon a bit like that, and then like that, and then arm on the, okay, and there
See
we
how
go.
she's just crooked her knee there, as opposed to standing heels together, you know? It's better to have a slightly more dynamic pose than that.
Yeah, if you're looking, and if you're looking at something,
Indeed.
and if you are looking for a particularly, if it is a particularly difficult shot that you're looking for, you've got a specific pose in mind and having trouble describing it or such like that, then manually posing your cosplayer just is the easiest solution for both you and them.
Sadly, the one thing that you can't manually pose is facial expressions. So
Yeah.
you tell somebody to look a bit mean and they just start going like that.
Okay.
So again, natural. Some people are not very smiley. Just get them to just look straight at you.
There's also one more tip I forgot to include in this, and that is for cosplayers, come prepared to the convention. Do a little bit of research into your character. Does your character have any trademark poses that they do? Is your character happy, sad? Are they the fighting type, etc., etc.? One of the first things I usually ask a cosplayer whenever I'm taking their photograph is, do you have any poses prepared? If you have 2 or 3 poses prepared, then that can last you for the entire convention. It really can. And if you're worried, like, if your character is very smiley, for instance, and you're not you're not naturally a very good smiler, practice smiling in the mirror. Look, there are plenty of, yeah, exactly. Yeah, I say that, but there's like plenty of good guides. There's like guides online for like professional models and such like that on how to smile. I think my friend Laura actually did a panel at one of the expos where she gave tips on how to smile and how to express yourself, and using tips that she'd gotten from like model tutorials, etc. And if that is something that worries you as a cosplayer, not being able to smile, just go to the mirror and practice smiling and get something down. All you really need is one natural looking smile, and that can last you for the entire convention. Okay? But going back to what we were saying before, make sure you're comfortable smiling as well, because nothing looks more awkward than a forced smile. Okay, so that is our tip. So we're going to go on to just posing practice now. Like I said at the beginning, this is just going to be a free-form workshop for everyone. We've got some volunteers here.
Yeah, we've got a number of different people, okay? We will do a bit, we'll just sort of show you a bit on how to kind of formulate people into group shots right at the very end. We've got about half an hour before the masquerade starts, so if anyone needs to leave early...
Before the panel finishes and then the masquerade.
Oh, the masquerade's at 4:30, isn't it? Yeah. So we've got about an hour before the masquerade starts, so just stay as long as you need to. We've got this room until the masquerade, so just come up, have a shot of just practicing posing with people. Feel free to ask our volunteers to just assume different poses. Again, bear in mind all the tips that we've just told you about in the tutorial.
Yeah.
And just go for it, guys. I'm going to move the table across so we've got some room over here.
And really just compare, contrast shots, see what works, what doesn't work, etc. And ask for help as well.